Hi, Katherine Walters from the Knitted Raven here today. Hello, these are my hands. Today I'm going to show you how to make ear wires. In the last video that I posted, I showed you how to center wire wrapped loops above beads. So we're going to take those and turn them into a pair of earrings today. What you need for making ear wires is 20 gauge wire. This is 20 gauge copper that I have cleaned and straightened, and I've cut it to about 3-inch length. You won't actually need that much, but 3 inches is a good length for demonstration purposes. So that's why I chose that. You are also going to need a few tools. You're going to need a bench block, which is a piece of a steel block. You're going to want a mallet. This is a plastic mallet. It won't mar your wire, but it will help us harden it. You are going to want a chasing hammer. If you can only afford to buy 2 hammers for yourself starting out, buy a decent chasing hammer. That's got a polished head on this side that's got a slight curvature to it, and it's got the rounded knob on the other side. Both of those are good for texturing, and I'll show you a little about that later on in the video. The plastic mallet is just exactly that. It's a piece of hardened plastic on the end of a wooden handle. They're not expensive, and they're great for hardening wire. You're also going to want your trusty round nose pliers. You're going to want a pair of chain nose pliers, and you're going to want a pair of wire cutters that are geared for the gauge wire that you're using. Now, this is a set of flush cutters that are gauged to cut up to an 18 gauge, so 20 gauge is actually smaller, so I'm good to go there. You're also going to want a jewelry polishing pad. This is the Pro Polish pad, as you can see, a partially used Pro Polish pad. For your finishing, you're also going to want a little bit of sandpaper. In this case, it's an automotive paper, and it's a 2000 grit. It's my go-to grit for finishing. You're also going to need a dowel of some kind. Now, you might have a piece of a wooden dowel, or you might have a pair of these. These are called wrap and tap pliers. And usually when I make ear wires, I use these. But as this or a Sharpie marker is far more accessible to most people, I'm going to show you how to use these today. So, first off, we start with our round nose pliers. Actually, first we start with our flush cutters, and we cut a little tiny bit off the end to square it up. Then we take our round nose pliers fairly close to the end. Now I've got a mark there. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger than I normally would, just so it's easier for you to see on camera. And I just make a simple loop. Oops. Hold tight, boys and girls. I appear to have... I'm working with my camera and a frame in front of me. I can tell you it is not an ideal setup, but you're going to make basically the equivalent of a wire P, letter P. So we're going to do that a second time. Make sure you got a flush cut in there, and grab your pliers, and in the same place again, you want to go all the way around till you get a letter P. Put them back in, finish your P. I'm going to close the letter P now. And again, this is a little bit bigger than I would normally choose to make, but I'm making my loops a bit bigger because I thought it would make it easier for you to see. So I start off, as you can see on my bead mat here, with 2 letter P's. The next thing I do is I bring those letter P's up so they're together. Now you might have noticed that on my pliers I had a place marked. You can see the mark on my pliers. That was to help me make loops of the same size, and that's important because the size of your loops will impact the size of, or the drop of, your earrings. Now what you do is you use your thumb and you brace the loops up against your thumb with the 2 long tails sticking out like this, and you're pinching that to the dowel fairly snugly because you don't want it to move. That's where these puppies are a lot easier because they've got square edges to brace against. And what you do is you wrap right around till it touches. So you got something now that looks like this. Okay, I'm going to slide that back on. Slide that back on my dowel. I just slid it off because I wanted to show you. You don't actually need to slide yours off. Now, if you will look here, I'm holding this now, so they're pretty much lined up, and that's what you want to do. Then you bring your chain nose pliers in, so you've got a nice right angle there, and you give it a little tweak. So now you've got something that looks like this. You are 3 parts of the way through to making your wire shape. Putting it back on your dowel again, you line them up, and you mark where you want, or you just decide, like I'm going to do right now, and I'm going to cut through those 2 pieces right now, holding them to make sure they don't fly off into space. You have the basic shape of a pair of ear wires right here. Now, we're not finished yet, and here's where I guess some of your detail work is going to come in. First off, the process of making ear wires can tend to distort your wires slightly. Even though I did my best to twist and keep the wire perpendicular to the mandrel, it's very easy for things to get out of skew. So I am going to turn off this video for a second, and I am going to spend a little while hammering these with the plastic mallet. Back in a second. There's a reason why I actually make the ends here fairly long, and I'll show you it in a minute, because if you're holding like this and you're hammering like this, you can actually keep it steady on the bench block. Otherwise, it can fly off into space. Now, normally what I would do at this stage is I would take my chasing hammer now. I haven't done anything to change the shape of this wire yet. Right now, this wire is as round as when it came off the spool that I was working with. Now I'm going to hold the 2 ends with my finger, and I'm going to gently tap with my chasing hammer to slightly flatten and set that curve. You don't want to flatten it too much. I just give it a few taps on both sides. I'm going to repeat the process with this one. This does flatten the wire slightly, and it helps set the curve. Okay, we're getting close. The next step would be to inspect your wire for flea bites. And I'm going to point out a couple of places here where you're likely to have flea bites. Right here, anywhere along this curve of the loop, you may find flea bites. So I fold my sandpaper over a few times, and supporting the wire, I give it a few passes. And yes, I seem to be making the wire whistle. I have a good look, and anywhere else I might happen to see some tool marks. But right up here at the top of that curve is where you're most likely to get them. Okay? And then I'll do the same with this one. Now, one thing that I do encourage you to consider buying if you're going to be making your wires is what they call a cup burr. And let me see if I can find mine. It's a small tool set on the end of a... It's a small tool that looks like a bit like, I suppose, a screwdriver. And in it you can set little mandrels. Let's see if this is where I actually have it put. Aha! There we go. I'm not going to use this because technically you don't need this. It's just if you're going to be making a lot of ear wires, it goes a lot faster. And the cup burr goes in here, and supporting the wire between your fingers, you twist one way and then I twist the other way. and I twist again, and you keep doing that. And what it does is it takes the top edge off the wire, because that wire should feel soft. Now you can accomplish the same thing with your sandpaper. It's just going to take you a little bit of time. I will tell you too, don't buy the cheapest cut burr out there. I did that once, and this piece was so dull, I ended up using sandpaper anyway. So it's worthwhile, if you're going to buy one, buy yourself a decent one. But a few passes with sandpaper and you'll run it over your finger. And once you're satisfied with that, you can move on to the second one. But the idea here is it shouldn't be uncomfortable for someone to slide these wires into their ears. So remember, now you're trying to bevel the edges. There we go, that's much softer. Now normally what I would do at this stage is I would take my chain nose pliers, because I didn't notice this before, and gently close those loops. And then I'd toss them in my tumbler for probably an hour or so. That'll polish them and work harden them. I can achieve the same effect if I spend more time hammering this, but I'm not going to bore you with that. For all intents and purposes, you need to worry about hardening if the wire is extremely soft, and of course copper is, which is why I would tumble it so much. If you're going to get into making your own ear wires, this is dead soft wire. Normally for ear wires, I make my own sterling silver ear wires, and I use half hard wire because the job's partly done for you. It's a stiffer wire to begin with, half hard, and it is exactly what it sounds like. And it cuts down on how much hammering you need to do in order to get an ear wire that will hold up to day-to-day use. Now, I tell people, you don't want an ear wire so tough that it does not give, because you got to remember, these things will be sitting in your ears or in your customer's ears. And when the day comes that they hook their earrings into a sweater or a scarf, they'll be grateful that it gives a bit, because it's far less likely to tear your ear. So sometimes customers have come back to me and said, my ear wire, I bent it out of shape. And I always say, come back in, I'm happy to give you a new one. And they'll say, well, all my other ear wires are much tougher. And I say, yeah, and that's the maker's choice. My choice is to make an ear wire that will help my customer survive a mishap with a sweater or a scarf. But all is left now to actually turn these into earrings is to open up the loop, grab the drop that you made earlier, grab the second ear wire, now for demonstration purposes we're going to slide this back on the wire because I want to show you something. You will recall the last time I told you that not all beads are created equal. And oftentimes you've worked really, 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 really hard and you end up with two earrings that aren't quite the same length. Now, I don't know if you can see it because my gizmo's on an angle, but those beads aren't quite the same length. The one on the right is actually hanging a bit lower. So what I do is I go back in and I push against the bottom of the wire ever so slightly. Now that's better. And now you have a pair of earrings. And that's how you make ear wires to create earrings. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you found it helpful. If there are any other topics that you would like to see me post videos about, please let me know in the comments. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so. And if you like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up as it helps my channel. Thanks so much, and hope to see you again real soon. Bye for now.